So today we're going to look at 12 volt Volkswagen wiper motors. I have this wiper motor sitting here. It's the one that came out of the Dune buggy we're putting together. I'm going to test this to make sure it works. When it came apart, I believe this is a 69 to 68 to 70 wiper motor. It has this type of nut on the arm out here on the studs on either side. When this came apart, this wiper shaft broke off inside of this nut. So I've got to replace this wiper shaft, find another nut laying around, and get the parts together I need to kind of rebuild this thing in a sense. I'm hoping the motor is good. It should be. It worked a few years back, but it clearly needs a good cleaning. It's got some questionable wiring, but I want to go through how to test one of these motors. If you buy it at a swap meet, or you pick it up out of a junkyard, or maybe it's just in a box of stuff you've got laying around, and you want to test it, see if it's good, and either move it down the road or use it for a project. So we'll get this cleaned up, and we'll go through testing this motor. So I've got the wiper motor in a small vise, just so that I can lay it flat here, and the regulator can operate without hitting the electrical bench here. And I've cleaned up the back of this where all these terminals are. And if you look down in here, there's a number on each one of these. And you'll see, and I'll try to get a close up here, that all the way to the left-hand side, we have 53A, then 31B, then we have 53 and 53B. If you're working on a 6-volt single speed motor, this is a 12-volt 2-speed, then some of these numbers will be different. Your 53s will be replaced with, I believe, 54, but I will double check that. And you'll only have one of them because it's a single speed. So what these terminals are is 53A is your park positive, 53B is your park negative, 53 is your low speed, and 53B is your high speed. This tab down here is a ground for the motor. You could technically ground it anywhere on the motor, but there is a spade terminal here just for factory Volkswagen wiring. So to test this, I have a power supply here. You could test this with a 12-volt battery, or if you're working on a 6-volt motor, you could test it with a 6-volt motor. In this case, I have a power supply set to 12 volts. I believe I'm at 5 amps, so should have no problem moving this motor. If I take my ground, and I'm going to attach my ground to the ground terminal, and then if you look through this, so 53 should be my low speed. So if I hit this, we'll see if it moves. And it does. And we can see it's moving at the slower speed with a bit of a squeak to it. If we go to 53B, here's our speed number 2, high speed, and you can see that it's an obvious difference of the speed, moving right along. But you'll notice if we work through this and say I hit this and we're right here, if you imagine wiper arms and blades being on these 2 pivots, if you just were to turn on your wipers and then shut them off, your wipers stay wherever it shuts off. And that's the whole point of the park. So now this wiper transmission is halfway through its cycle. So if I go over to 53A and I hit that and I hold on it, all it's going to do is return to the park position and then sit there. The ground in this case doesn't need to be used because of the way I'm moving through these wires. If you had a Volkswagen switch on here, the ground would come from the switch to control the 2 of these so that when it's sitting in park, see if I hit the ground with that, you get a little bit of a jump. And you can hold power to this the whole entire time and nothing will happen. I'll try to show you a diagram of this too. Inside of the motor, I may even be able to take it apart later and show you. Inside of the motor, there is a cam that rotates around. And if you imagine, there's a set of contacts in there. And what's going to happen is when that cam reaches, it's going to actually disconnect. Even though I'm holding on here, it's going to disconnect the power from this terminal to the motor itself. So if I run this a little bit, it moves the position of the motor outside of that cam. I hit the park position, and it's going to rotate all the way until it hits that cam. It's going to disconnect the power here, and that's where the wipers are going to sit. So in order to get this to run and park in its position, so right now you see we can just stop here, and you would need to power this to get the cam to go. I'm going to run this orange jumper wire right to the positive so that it always has power. So we can see this. We have power all the time at this park. And because of the cam, it's disconnected right now. Now if I touch this to, say, the low speed, I'm adding power to the low speed. Everything's functioning the way it's supposed to. And then if I was to shut the wiper switch off while the wipers are halfway up on the windshield, it's still going to return to park. I jump the wipers, it still returns to park afterwards. It can go high speed, and it's still going to return to park. So this wiper motor is good, other than the squeaking, and it probably needs some cleanup, and a little grease inside probably wouldn't hurt it. But for testing this motor, for testing purposes, this motor is a good motor. I don't see any reason why it can't be reused, so that's what I'm going to do. My next steps on this is to pull this entire wiper transmission off, pull the transmission apart, take all these joints apart and separate everything, clean the motor up, and I think the transmission, because it's going in a car that I don't want to take apart again, I'm probably going to sandblast this whole wiper transmission. I need one new pivot, as I showed you before, because this was broken off. I'll check this other pivot and see if it's any good. It feels pretty tight, so I think it'll be okay. And I'll replace all the seals and stuff like that. But we'll sandblast this, and I'm not sure yet. I'll either paint or powder coat the wiper transmission parts, the arms and everything, just so that they'll be clean for a very long time. And then the motor itself, I'm going to do a little cleanup on it and see what we need to do to just kind of get this into service and not have to worry about it, you know, a year, 2 years from now, starting to not function correctly, stuff like that. All right. So next up is to clean this thing up. So these plastic pieces on here that kind of cover over the two bottom screws typically have one of these little, I don't know if you can see that, but one of these little hooks on either side. One of these is broken off. I probably did it just moving it around, who knows, but so either way, that's got to come off. Typically, you just kind of lightly squeeze them together and this plastic piece will pop off. Gives you access to the bottom screws. So inside of these, they typically have a bunch of fingers. Like I don't know if that's the proper name for them, but there's basically a bunch of fingers that go around. And let's see if I can get this apart without knocking anything out of it. Yeah, there you go. So here's the fingers I'm talking about. Each one of these is just basically, it's an electrical connector going into there. And as the motor, you know, they make the electrical contact on here. The motor spins around. I can't spin it because it's a gear-driven motor out of the actual motor itself here. But if we're real careful, what I kind of like to do with these is I just want to scoop out as much of this old grease as I can get out of it. It's probably not in horrible shape. Actually, it's kind of, I mean, it's cooler in here in the barn right now. It's probably 55, 50 degrees, somewhere around there. But this grease over time, I think it just kind of dries out. So I usually like to clean as much of it as I can out and then just re-grease it. This motor's working. We know that because we tested it. So that's really all I'm going to do with this thing. And then I'm going to clean it up on the outside. If it wasn't working, rebuilding this is a whole different thing. To actually rebuild the motor, put new brushes in it and all that type of stuff, that's a very different job than what we're looking at doing here. It can be done. You can do it yourself. I've done them before. If you didn't know what you were doing with them, then it's probably best to take it to either a motor shop or a automotive electrical shop that, you know, that rebuilds starters and alternators, stuff like that. Can probably handle doing one of these motors pretty easy. I'm sure they do them, you know, for various cars. But realistically, I'm sure you can go online and you can either buy a brand new one of these, or maybe even there's someone selling rebuilt ones. But you look at this, once I wipe away the grease there, you can see how clean that ring is. It's got one little, you can see the drag in the middle there where, I don't know which finger, but one of these fingers was, you know, spends its more of its time putting pressure in that one spot, you know. And you can see, let's see, where is it? Here's your cam for the park position. If you look at this, you've got a wheel going all the way around, and you can see the rub mark right here where that outer finger right here connected to this terminal, what number is it? I forget. The 53A. You can see where that's been rubbing for a long time on there, and then you can see this gap in it. So what happens is as this motor is turning around and it hits this gap, no positive electrical current can go through this finger and into this disc to tell it how fast to turn. So it stops there. And before it's, like I showed you, before it starts working again, it needs one of these other functions needs to happen before that's going to rotate around. And then this would stop it again when it hits that open spot. But you can see, or maybe you can see the wear marks. There's a wear mark here on this tooth. There's a wear mark out here, and then there's this outer wear mark. So that's pretty much it with this. I'm obviously going to clean up the outside of it too. I just wanted to get into it first to make sure that this wasn't, you know, all rusted inside or something along the lines of that was going to tell me like, hey, even though it's functioning, I don't really want to put this back in a car that I plan on keeping for a very long time. So that's kind of it with that. And in that case, if it was bad like that, I would just grab another one and throw a different one in. But this thing looks great. It's really clean. You can see the worm gear right here, where that's going to rotate around on here and turn the shaft. I can't put power to it and run it right now because you need these parts to make it go, to make the connection. But that's it. I'm going to clean this up. I'm going to put a little fresh dielectric grease in here, and then just throw that cap back on, and we'll start cleaning the whole outside of it. All right, guys, so I've got these all sandblasted, and I decided I'm going to end up powder coating them. So I've got them hanging in the oven here just to make sure that my my setup is going to work, and they're going to, you know, kind of hang in there. I'm going to preheat this oven, and I'm going to preheat the parts just to burn off. I wiped them down with acetone, but just to burn off any kind of you know, like grease or a little bit of crap that might be still stuck in them. I like to preheat stuff, especially where these are kind of pitted a little bit. They're wiggling, so it's hard to see, but they have some pitting. So powder coating isn't always great when you have sharp edges like this. You have sharp edges and you have pitting, so it's really not the best. But I'm just going to put a matte black powder coat on it, so it should, for the most part, work out. And the oven I'm using, it's just an old wall oven that I got off of, like, you know, Craigslist or, you know, whatever back in the day. And I just have it mounted in the workbench. It's not something, when you do powder coating, you can't use any oven that you use for this type of thing. You can't reuse it again to cook food, because all the paint fumes and stuff get into that, you know, into the surface of it and everything. And, it's just not, you know, it's not a good idea, so. All right, the system I use is an Eastwood one. I've had it probably 15 years at least. The way powder coating works, these are all nice and hot. Everything's burned off. You want everything as clean as possible. I've got my ground connected here, and you're basically using static electricity to draw the powder onto the part. Then you got to get it back to the oven without knocking it around too much, and then you bake it. So I'll give you the real quick show here on it. And if you get a bad ground, you may have to, in this case, I got to go right on. Okay, so that's kind of the quick how you powder coat here. I'll give you a quick look at this thing. It's just a box. You have a button here. When you hit this button, you get this light here. And what that is actually doing is that's creating a static charge between, grab the gun here, between the tip of this gun and anything that is grounded here by this ground electrode. I haven't used this powder coating stuff. It's probably been like 7 or 8 years since the last time I actually plugged it in and used it. I just haven't had a reason to for a bit, and I figured I'd get it back going again. This is just an oven tray. It probably needs to be sandblasted so that I can get, the way I like doing it is the metal hanger would get, you know, a negative charge from here. It would connect through this whole rack, and then anything I hang would have metal hooks hanging holding the metal piece, and then you would get a real easy flow of current through it. This rack probably, I should have cleaned it first. I was just trying to get everything done kind of quick. I don't have a lot of time today for this, so I wanted to get it going quick. And it does make a mess in your shop. So it's one of those things you got to kind of figure out how you want to set it up. But when I bought this, I think that it was like $300 or $400. It was pretty expensive. I'm pretty sure they're like much cheaper now. You can buy pretty much the same setup or even probably a better one. And then you just get yourself a, you know, crappy oven that someone's throwing out. This is going to be in this oven at 400 degrees for 20 minutes. And what'll happen, I'll give you a quick look. You'll see it start to flow out. I don't want to let all the heat out, but you'll see it start to flow out, and it'll get real shiny and it'll look like wet paint. And usually after that, you go a few more minutes and then you can pretty much shut it down. But that's going to take 18 minutes more to 20 minutes total to get to that point. And then at that point I usually, like with this where I don't have anything else going in here, normally I probably would have tried to do these 3 pieces individually just so I don't bang them around. I'm probably going to have some scratching and stuff like that where the hooks are from running them back and forth right now, because I was in a rush. I had the oven open, letting all the heat out. So that's kind of the way that works. I'll bring you back when I pull them out and you can check them out. Okay, all the wiper parts are out of the oven. They're cooled down. I've got everything cleaned and laid out here to put this wiper motor back together. I ended up cleaning up the case. I glued the sticker back on just because. I did end up having, and you can see here, I got 2 new wires here. I did end up having, while I was cleaning it, the insulation started peeling off these wires, and it goes in through a metal hole here. So I figured it probably better off to just pull it off. I had hoped to just slide this off and replace the wires, or put insulation, put a piece of, heat shrink or something over the wire. And it ended up, it was kind of a, a fiddly job getting the brushes back all set up and everything. So I just ended up doing it off camera. I probably should have filmed it, but I didn't. I've tested it again, and it does work perfectly. It's not a horribly complicated job to do this. If I have another one apart, I'll show you. It's more of just cutting some wire, running them through, and soldering them on this end, and then soldering them to the brush mounts. Where there's 3 brushes going around the armature. Those 3 brushes, 2 of them have wires. One of them, I believe, is grounded. It doesn't have a wire coming out to here anyway. I don't even remember. But my job today is I'm going to try to see if I can get this thing put back together. I picked up a new wiper pivot. I've got some new bushings to go in my linkage here. So I think that's where we'll start. Let me get some of this out of the way. Start by getting this motor back in place. And this is pretty similar for all Beetle wiper motors. You're going to have different shaped arms. You're going to have different style pivots, but for the most part, I mean, a Beetle, a Bus, they're all pretty similar. I think the earlier, well, not so the earlier cars definitely have a different style motor. This motor has like a the electric portion of the motor off to this side. The earlier ones have kind of like a rounded, half-rounded cap over the motor itself. So they're a little different looking, but ultimately the entire thing is really, it's the same job doing this. And it's one of those things that you could, to clean up a wiper motor so that it's going to work good. When you have a car apart for restoration or whatever you're doing, it's a good idea to kind of run through and do this just to make sure you don't have any problems down the road or anything. I have a hole here that I may need to chase with a tap. It doesn't seem like it's threading in real easy, so either it's just a funny angle or maybe there's some crap stuck in there. Yeah, let me run something through that and I'll bring you right back. All right, so there was just a little bit of junk stuck in there. I was able to pick it out of the threads, and it seems like this bolt's going in good now. It's one of those things, you run into stuff like that. You take it apart, the bolt comes out fine. There's some dirt somewhere in there that just kind of gets jammed up, and that's it. Then you're in a, you don't want to just tighten the bolt up and destroy the threads in there, because this is an aluminum housing. I've got the wrong size socket on here too. So you'll strip out the threads real quick. So it's one of those, if it doesn't feel like it's going in easy, then you probably want to check it out. The way this goes together, you get your motor. I got the motor on the bottom. The dished portion of this, and it's always a good idea to take pictures of stuff when you take it apart if you're unsure, if you've never done one before. The dished portion of this wiper transmission sticks up. So you've got the raised portion here towards the motor. The dish portion comes out this way. I had one pivot that the end broke off, so I've got the new one. The old one I've got cleaned up, and I'm just going to put some grease on it. I ended up taking it apart just to kind of make sure I could clean out inside of this brass portion and wipe the steel down and get the junk off it, which I still have a little bit apparently on there. And I want to re-grease these, and then re-grease this one, and then we'll put it back together. And I'll show you how the whole thing just kind of goes on there. There is a, probably should have showed it to you first, but there is a section in the middle here that is slightly recessed. So the grease will kind of stick into that area and keep it lubricated, or it should. There's a washer at the very bottom, the wavy washer that was on there. And then we have a small washer that goes over the top. When you put these back together also, I have it kind of easy because I have a brand new one sitting here. But you've got this stop that is, say, a third of the way on the shaft. It's not a removable thing. It's part of the shaft. So you do want to make sure when you put this back together that you're at that point. Otherwise, when you go to put this whole thing together, and if your stop is way up here, this isn't going to reach, and you're going to have to take the whole thing back apart again. So there's a small washer that goes over the end, and then there's this tiny clip that's going to go on here. All right, there we go. So that's snapped on. I didn't even need the pliers. I was able to just push it on. Once you get the right angle, I was holding it to compress that bottom washer, and then you can get it on the slot. And then there's your wiper pivot is all set, greased. I'm assuming the new one has some grease in it. It feels like it does. I don't see any reason to take it apart. All right, so with these wiper pivots, I'm going to put this thing together just like in this position, just because it's kind of sitting there nice. Your pivot that has the 2 pivot points on it, the linkage pivot points, goes onto this side. I believe this is actually, when this motor goes in the car, I believe this is the driver's side. I'm kind of doing it upside down here, but it's the way I took it apart. So in my head, I remember that's how it was. This little stop here, the whole point of that is that's going to go into this hole, and then that's going to stop the whole entire thing from rotating, and hopefully you can see that. That's the purpose of that there, is to stop that from being able to move beyond where it's supposed to. All right. So this pivot's going to slide through the hole. And turn it up this way a little bit. And then what needs to happen on this side, and you can kind of look at this one and you can see all the different hardware that's on it. In between these 2 washers, you have to imagine is the body of the car. So I'm really only concerned about this bottom one. So I've got a nut. I'm going to throw this nut on here. This should be I believe this is a 17 millimeter. I'm just going to tighten this thing down. I'm not going to go too crazy. Chip my powder coating a little bit already right there. Okay. So that one's on there. So there's our wiper pivot. This one I'm going to disassemble. Get all this stuff out of the way. And we'll get this guy on here too. And it'd be same exact thing. It's just a new one, but otherwise it's, it's the same idea. Wiper pivots are on. I guess my next step here is to get this center pivot. Do I want to call this a pivot? I mean, it's got a pivot on the end, but this center part on here. And when I took this apart, I have the luxury of, I videoed this, so I know exactly how this thing was put together when it came apart. It's a good idea with stuff like this. Take a few good pictures before you do this. So I know that with this motor in park, I actually shouldn't say that. Assuming the motor was in park when I took it apart, I don't know that it was. Assuming it was, I believe it was. This was in a position where when I took this apart, I tried to get a wrench under here to get it apart, and I remember it being just slightly over this bolt to the point I couldn't get a socket on it, but I could get a wrench into the side. So just kind of like think about stuff like that as you take things apart. I'm going to throw the washer on. I'm going to throw the nut on. This is the type of thing where if you needed to move this, and I'll show you why it even matters. If you needed to move this, you could move it, you know, at a later time. You could pull that off and you could just relocate some things, and that wouldn't be a big deal. But let's say this motor's all set up, and when it goes into the park position, it's going to be here. If you rotate this and put it over this direction, your park position is going to change, and you could just move the wiper arms on it. But let's say in the car, if when this is in park, these things are in off to the side away from everything, and let's say it's in park over here, maybe this thing's hanging down towards another component depending on the year of the vehicle, whatever it is. It's just kind of a good idea to get it back where it goes, and then you don't have to worry about wipers being up on the windshield. This particular style has a knurl on the end, is what this ribbed portion is called. So you can actually rotate the wiper arm on there. A lot of earlier cars have a set screw that goes into this, and there'll be a flat spot on this pivot. So if you were to put this in the wrong place, you wouldn't have a choice but put your wiper arms in the correct way because of the flat spot. So you'd be, your wipers would park in the wrong spot. And nobody wants, you don't want shut the wipers off and they're stuck up in the air, or I guess even worse, when you're running the wipers, they'd go too far down or too far to one side. So, all right, so there's that. I think my next thing is to get this crossbar on. And I got some new pivots here, or two pivot bushings. See if we can get some of these out of here. If I can actually rip the bag. I had actually bought a bunch of parts for this and forgot about these until I had disassembled it. So these pivots are just a little plastic. They got a big lip on this side, small lip on that side. The bottom, this big lip actually has a slight bevel out to the edge. They literally just push into these arms, and they should, and then just snap right in. There we go. And we'll put one on the end of every arm. This one's a little tight. There we go. There we go. Get this one too. It's just got a little piece of plastic stuck off this edge here on them. Little casting flash, let's call it, where these are made in a mold. I'm sure they're injected molded or something in just a little piece of plastic scrap hanging off the end there. No big deal. These are very cheap. There's no point in not replacing them. They're hard. When you go to get them out, they end up getting pretty much destroyed coming out. When I took these ones out, this one's actually not too bad, but you can see where the top edge has been banged up. It's on the floor now. All right, with the bushings in those, I'm going to grease these pivots. The bushings are made out of pretty smooth plastic. I'm not sure what kind of plastic it is. I don't know that you have to grease these, but I always do. I'm sure it doesn't hurt anything. When this goes back together, you want to look at this in a way that I had talked about this edge here, where this is the side that goes away from the motor, and then the opposite side, you've got this raised edge here, it's sunk in. all of this linkage is exactly the same way. You want this side facing the same as this way, same way as that. So you got to kind of look at it that way, and make sure you're putting it in the right way. So what I'm going to do here is get this started, flip it over. And these plastic bushings can be a little tight getting stuff together. So you may have to kind of squeeze it on there. There we go. And it's tight, but you want it to be that way. You don't want loose wipers. Everything's flapping around on you. And then you're going to get the C-clip on. A lot of the time these you'll need to, let me see if I can do this with the camera there. Just kind of pop these on with a pair of pliers if you can get yourself out of the way. Needle nose might actually be better. There we go. Okay, so there's that. Let me come back over and reset this, get that up that way. And the same thing on the opposite side. I've already got a little bit of grease on here. I'm gonna push this in. This one went right in. And we'll grab a wavy washer, put that on, and then our clip. And you just want to make sure these clips are actually seating correctly. This one's not. Let me try flipping this washer over a little. There we go. Okay. Make sure your seat's clipped. There's no point in you install this whole thing and then you hear a clip go bouncing out of it and the linkage falls apart. All right, so let me flip back over. Get these in the position. And you can see what I was saying with the stamping being the same position. Just like this arm, you can see the difference between the two. This arm's the same thing. It's just going to go in this position. I'm going to throw a little bit of grease on it. That's a lot of grease. And we'll get this on here. Okay, there we go. Get some more wavy washers on there, and we'll get some clips on here. And this thing will be ready to test it. And make sure that everything's still gonna function the way it's supposed to be. There we go. One more here. And if by chance you have this motor arm in the wrong position, you could move it. I may or may not be in the correct position. I think I'm relatively close, but that's pretty much it. That's the whole wiper motor put together. I'm gonna throw some hardware on here just so I don't lose it. I have new body bushings to go on here. And I'm just going to kind of put all this together so it's in one place and I don't lose it until I get this thing installed. So. Okay, So let's run this over to the bench and we'll just run it and just make sure everything's exactly the way it's supposed to be. Put some grease on it. All right. If you're gonna run one of these, make sure you keep your fingers out of the way because they'll bite you. We get our ground there. And we'll go low speed. All right, everything looks like it's going pretty good. Now I'll hit the park. Oops, disconnect everything. Hit the park on here. And that's where we're gonna park. So as I had mentioned, like this would go further. So if this arm needs to be adjusted more that way to really finalize this park and push it further down, then it can be. In this case, I feel like everything I have is kind of lined up pretty good. It's a Dune buggy. Under the dash is pretty tight, so I may have to make some final adjustments to this, but overall, this thing's done. So you can see, you know, how simple it is to clean up a wiper motor. Get everything working, replace a few cheap parts, bushings, things like that. And then, you know, if you're doing a restoration or even if you're just doing a bunch of work on your car and you happen to have it out, this might be worth doing just so that down the road you don't have to go back and think about, you know, oh, hey, my wiper motor's making a clunking noise or squeaking or whatever it is. You know that everything's good, everything's taken care of, and you don't have to powder coat stuff. I just did that because I have this stuff. You could clean this up, spray paint it, and put it back together, which is what I, you know, may have done in a different car if it, you know, for time reasons. But in this one, this just made sense to do it this way. Anyway, so that's it. Hope this is somewhat useful to you. Appreciate you watching the videos. Thanks for the support.